Welcome to the Comfy Chairs, a podcast from 123 Limited. Today's episode is a Comfy Chairs Hard Questions, comfyHQ installment. It's a bite-sized offering to help grow our knowledge of leading and learning. During each HQ episode, I answer your questions about specific Comfy Chairs topics, how to tackle day-to-day leadership challenges, or any other subject that fits in the beautifully broad category of leading and learning. In today's episode, we're not going to talk about questions though, but about answers. What should I do if my team is too dependent on me for answers? If you're starting to notice or feel increasingly weighed down by the fact that your team can't seem to make a move without checking with you first, I want you to pause, take a breath, and prepare for some uncomfortable honesty. Because while it's easy to get frustrated with the people around you, here's the truth. If this is a pattern, it's not about them. It's about you. Now, you're not the first leader to deal with this dynamic, and you certainly won't be the last. And there's good news. It's fixable. But we don't fix things by blaming others. We fix them by understanding our role in the situation and taking steps to shift the culture we've created, often unintentionally. Let's dig into a few of the most common causes of overdependence, and then talk about how you can begin to reset expectations and build a stronger, more self-sufficient team. The first possibility is that you've actually taught them to come to you for everything. Whether consciously or not, you may have created a system where your approval, input, or ideas are always required before anything moves forward. Now, this can happen for lots of reasons. Maybe you like being helpful. Maybe you like being seen as the go-to person. Maybe it's just always been this way and no one questioned it, including you. Here's what I want you to know. Leadership is not about being indispensable. It's about building capability in others. If you're answering every question, you're also taking away their opportunity to grow their own judgment. So look at your patterns and habits. When someone brings a question to you, do you immediately answer? Or do you pause and ask, what are your thoughts? When a decision needs to be made, are you stepping in by default? Or are you encouraging others to weigh in and take action? Resetting this expectation doesn't require a dramatic announcement. It starts in the day-to-day. Begin by making room for your team to step up and give them room to try, fail, learn, and eventually grow. The second option is that you haven't shared enough information. This one's subtle but critical. Your team may be coming to you constantly because they don't have what they need to do the job, to do it with confidence. That doesn't necessarily mean you're being secretive or withholding. It may mean that you've gotten used to having the context they don't. But without that context, they can't make decisions without feeling like they're flying blind. Imagine asking someone to write a report, but they don't know who the audience is or what the objective is. Of course they'll need to ask questions. Of course they'll feel unsure. So the fix here is transparency. Clarity over control. Ask yourself, well, what decisions are people asking me about most often? What information do I have that they might not? And where could I be more consistent in sharing context, goals, or reasoning? Don't wait for people to ask you for details. Build a habit of sharing up front. And just as important, let them know that you trust them to take that information and make smart choices. The last possibility I want to discuss is that you've put people in roles they aren't prepared for. It's a tough one. Sometimes people depend on you too much because they actually can't do the job without you. At least not yet. This might mean they're new. It might mean they haven't received the right training. It might mean that the expectations of the role have changed and you haven't fully addressed the gap. Regardless, this isn't a matter of laziness or incompetence. It's a signal that support or development may be needed. So ask, did I clearly define what success in this role looks like? Did this person receive the training they need? Are they using the strengths they were hired for? Are they being asked to stretch into something brand new? If the issue is a mismatch of skills, knowledge, or ability, then the solution isn't to expect more from them. It's to coach, train, and clarify. Support them in getting where they need to go, and in the meantime, adjust your expectations accordingly. To figure out what's really going on, look closely at the types of questions you're getting. What do you want me to do? This could be a sign of unclear expectations. Is it okay if I? You might be dealing with learned dependence. Do we have a policy for this? That's a signal they may need more information. Also, take note of when the questions are happening. Are people checking in before making a move? Or are they looping you in after? Are the same people asking over and over again, or is this widespread across the team? All of these clues can help you start by identifying where to focus your energy. And once you've diagnosed the root causes, you can begin to shift your own behaviors as well as the culture. So model the behavior you want. Ask questions instead of providing answers. Say things like, what options have you considered? Or what's your recommendation? Create permission. Say out loud, you don't need to check with me for every decision. Tell them where they have authority and back them up when they use it. And normalize learning. Celebrate thoughtful risks. Debrief mistakes without blame. Let people know that growth matters more than perfection. And if it feels like things have gone too far, you can even name it. Call a team meeting and say, I've noticed that we've developed a pattern where everything flows through me, and I want to change that. Then work together to redefine roles, decision rights, and communication norms. The move from do they need me to do they trust themselves is one of the biggest transitions a leader can make. It requires courage, not just from your team, but from you. You have to be willing to let go of control, to make space for others, to watch them try and sometimes stumble. But when you do, you're creating something far more powerful than a team that executes your vision. You're building a team that can think, decide, and lead alongside you. How do I lead when I don't have all the answers? I love having these two questions together today because, of course, your team will and should look to you for answers. And the fact is, there will be plenty of times when you come up empty-handed. Because leading contains a paradox. We want to create teams who don't rely on us for every decision. And yet, we also want to show up as steady, informed, and ready. The pressure to know everything can be enormous. But here's the truth. You are allowed to not know. In fact, I'm personally of the opinion that it's awesome when leaders say, I don't know, if they are prepared to take action and change their lack of knowledge. Not knowing can be a powerful, transformative leadership moment if you meet it with humility, curiosity, and the willingness to act. Let's look at some of the situations where a leader might be questioning their ability to lead in the face of not knowing, and what to do if you find yourself facing the same circumstances. You could be a new leader, yesterday's expert and today's novice. This is one of the most common identity crises in leadership. You were promoted because you were good at something, maybe even the best. You had deep knowledge, a go-to reputation, and a track record of knowing your stuff. But now you're in charge, and suddenly you don't feel like the expert anymore. You're responsible for outcomes you're still learning to understand. And worst of all, people still expect you to know everything. If this is where you are, hear this. You're not failing, you're transitioning. This shift from subject matter expert to team leader takes time, and it takes grace. You're building a new kind of muscle now, less about technical answers and more about people, systems, context, and decision making. When you're in this phase, remind yourself, I don't know the answer yet, but I'm learning fast. Consider inviting your team into the process. Let them see that growth doesn't stop when you become the leader. In fact, it begins again. Sometimes we find ourselves in the case of not having the answers because we have a new member of the team who is bringing unique experience and perspective, along with novel and challenging questions. This is awesome. It means you've hired well. You've brought in someone who will raise the bar, ask new questions, and make the whole team smarter. Let me be clear, this is not a threat. It is a gift. And yes, it can feel uncomfortable when you feel like you're no longer the sharpest tack in the box. Here's what strong leaders do in this moment. Instead of defending your knowledge or the team, or downplaying this new person's expertise, you can say, that's a great point. I haven't thought of it that way. What else do you see? You're not just making space, you're modeling what it looks like to honor others' expertise. You're showing your team that leadership doesn't mean having the best answer. It means creating the best environment for great answers to emerge. You could be in a situation where something has changed and the answers no longer exist. There's been a change, big or small, and suddenly what used to be true isn't. But your team is still looking to you for direction, and you have none. This is the moment where leadership is less about answers and more about presence. Because even if you can't give your team certainty, you can offer clarity. Here's what we know. Here's what we're watching. Here's what we're doing next. And it's always okay to say, I don't know the answer yet, but I will keep you in the loop. The leadership happening here isn't in having the answer. It's in owning the responsibility to go find it, or to name the fact that no one has it yet. Remember, the pressure you feel to have all the answers often comes just from you. Your employees are usually more than forgiving as long as we're honest, consistent, and communicative. They don't need perfection. They need trust. This topic, it's about more than tactics. It's about mindset. So I want to offer you a few to try on. Truths that I come back to often. Humility creates credibility. Saying, I don't know, does not make you weaker in the eyes of your team. It makes you human. What matters is what you do next. Relationships matter more than the right answers. If your team knows that you see them, care about them, and will advocate for them, they'll walk with you through ambiguity. Trust is built in the unknown. These moments, the ones where we can't predict, promise, or perform the way we want, they are where real leadership shows up. Above all, offer psychological safety. Let your team know that not knowing is allowed, that questions are welcome, curiosity is valued, and that you're all in this together. You're not being paid to have every answer. You're being trusted to lead through uncertainty, to hold space for learning, and to take wise, thoughtful action. You're being trusted to admit when you don't know and to demonstrate what it looks like to go find out. This is the kind of leadership our workplaces need: grounded, curious, and courageous. Not flawless, not all-knowing, just real. How do I make it safe to ask questions? This is the perfect place for us to close today. Because when your team depends too much on you and when you don't have all the answers, these moments live and breathe in one critical leadership space: psychological safety. That is the shared belief that this is a workplace where people can speak up, ask questions, admit mistakes, and challenge the status quo without fear of humiliation or punishment. If your team doesn't feel safe asking questions, none of the rest will matter. Because without questions, there's no clarity, no learning, no collaboration, no innovation. Questions are the road to everything else. And it's your job to build that safety. It's not on your employees to be brave enough. It is on you to create an environment where bravery isn't required just to speak up. Let's talk about how to do that. Your mindset. Choose curiosity over control. The most important shift you can make as a leader is internal. You have to truly believe deep down that questions are a gift. That being asked something doesn't mean that you're being challenged, undermined, or doubted. It means someone is paying attention, and it means they care about their job. Here's the thing, that's not how it always feels, especially if you're stressed, stretched thin, or feeling unsure yourself. It's easy to interpret questions as a critique. Our brains hear a question and go on alert. Am I being tested? Am I messing something up? Are they questioning my competence? So the work begins before the question is even asked. It begins in your mindset. You have to anchor yourself in gratitude. You have to decide intentionally and repeatedly that questions are welcome, that your job is to make room for inquiry, not to shut it down. When someone asks you a tough question, let your first reaction be, I'm so glad you asked. Even if it stings a little, even if you don't know the answer, especially if you don't. Curiosity beats control every time. Think about your words. Shift your language to invite openness. If you've ever closed a meeting by asking, any questions? And been met with silence, let me assure you, it's not because there are no questions. It's because the question you've asked is itself too easy to dismiss. Any questions implies a binary, yes or no. It carries an undercurrent of finality, as in, we're done here unless someone interrupts. Instead, use language that assumes questions do exist and then make space for them to be asked. Try questions like, what questions do you have? What's unclear so far? I'm sure I've missed something. What would you like me to go over again? I like this one. What's a concern you're holding that we haven't talked about yet? These are small shifts, but they matter. They signal that not only are questions allowed, they're expected. They normalize the idea that asking for clarity is part of the process, not a disruption of it. And one final note here, when you really want people to open up, wait. Ask your question and then sit in quiet. Don't rush to fill the empty space. Give people time to gather their thoughts and the courage to speak. And last is to look at your actions. Respond like it's the first time, every time. How you respond in the first moments following an employee's question sets the template for what questions employees are willing to ask in the future. Every time somebody asks a question, they're watching to see how it lands. They're watching you. So is everyone else in the room. And whether you mean to or not, you're teaching them what's safe and what's not. So what should you pay attention to? Your tone. Are you defensive, impatient, sarcastic? Even subtle irritation will shut things down. Pay attention to your facial expressions. Eye rolls, raised eyebrows, a tight smile. Your face might betray what your words don't. Just like body language. Crossing your arms, checking your watch, turning away. All of these can signal, I'm done with this. Follow up. Do you actually answer the question, or do you brush it off, move on, or make a joke? Dismissing a question, even lightly, tells people not to bother next time. Instead, respond like you've been waiting all day for someone to ask that question. Let your words and posture say, "Thank you. Appreciate you raising that. Let's talk through it." If you don't know the answer, be honest and then follow through. The way you treat today's question shapes the quality of tomorrow's conversation. You want to go further? Don't just react well to questions, actively encourage them. Build them into your routines. At the end of meetings, assign someone to play chief question asker. And one-on-ones, ask what's something you've been wondering about but haven't felt sure how to ask. Start retrospectives with what questions did we fail to ask during this process. When you normalize inquiry, you build a learning culture where innovation, growth, and engagement can thrive. You want to lead a team that asks good questions, and that means you have to be the kind of leader who welcomes them. This takes intentionality, it takes humility, and it takes patience. Because safety is built slowly over dozens of interactions, moments, and choices. But once it's there, it unlocks everything. It means people speak up when they're confused or when something feels off or when they have a better idea. It means you stop getting blindsided and your team gets better, sharper, and more confident. Here's your challenge this week. Notice how you respond. Notice what questions get asked and which don't. Notice what your words, your body, and your presence might be saying. And then choose curiosity, openness. To lead like questions are the greatest compliment you could receive. If this conversation gave you a clearer view of the kind of leader you want to be, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to my newsletter. You'll find a link in the show notes. Every other Tuesday, I share reflections, practical tools, and ideas for leaders who want to build trust, support growth, and shape stronger workplace cultures. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing your questions. If you have a question for comfyHQ, I'd love to hear it. Just follow the link in the notes, and don't forget, Comfy Chair's Hard Questions drop every other week, right between our deep dive conversations on leading and learning. Next week, I'll be back in the comfy chairs with a conversation about human-centric teams with guest Rachel Anderson. I'll see you then.